welcome back to another Spinato Spin. Great to have you here on this September the 12th, day after September 11th, remembrance. It's been 17 years now, and also right before big storms about ready to hit the East Coast. Hurricane Florence is bearing in on a lot of people, but bearing in a lot of people all the time is what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about time management. We're going to be talking about stuff like, knowledge, how important it is to have knowledge, all these various things that tie into time management. All we have when we break it down real simple is what we know in our time, right? All we know is everything we gathered in our whole lifetimes, right? All the information we gathered, whatever sort of beliefs we've inherited, whatever sort of attitudes we've gotten, whatever sort of feelings we have, all that stuff boils into time management, doesn't it? And not only that, it's time. Time is the most precious thing. They say one thing you can get a lot more of than time is money, right? Okay, you can always go out and make money, but you can't, no one's figured out how to make time. All right, I mean, there's some good expressions out there. I make time to take time to do the things I need to get done. That's a good self-talk. That's a good way to look at time, right? You always bore in on what's going on in that moment. You try to take whatever time you can to make yourself as productive as possible. Well, what's time management really all about? Isn't it all about taking a big picture and breaking into little pieces? Henry Ford said it real well. He said, you could do anything. Anything can be accomplished if you're willing to break it into small pieces and get to each task involved. And that's where the assembly line basically came from, didn't it? Wasn't the assembly line basically put together to save a lot of time, to help with time management? You see, time management goes a long way. Time management, another thing about time management, which is pretty amazing, is if you cut down time in one area, you might have more time to do something else. See, that's almost like an asset management, isn't it? Isn't that what asset management is, where you take a certain amount of stuff that you're spending in one area, or a certain amount of resources you have in one area, and share it to another to hopefully make the whole group as a whole stronger? Well, we all want to make a better day out of ourselves, don't we? We all want to have a better month, better year, better life, everything. So we want to be able to do that by using asset management. And our asset is really our time. Our time is so vital, so precious. It's really scary when you think about it. And we are just here for a flicker of time. And I've said this before, but it doesn't change. The bottom line is, if the world is incredibly old, right, and we're only here for a flicker of time, really 100 years if we're lucky, 75 years if we're okay, that's all we get. And really, when you think about it, your prime years, whatever they are, you want to call them, those are only a certain amount of years, aren't they? I mean, you can only be prime a certain time. After a while, you start going down, so you got to take advantage of every moment you have. And there's an old saying too. Let's say you wanted to accumulate a lot of money, or accumulate enough money so you can retire, like Andrew Carnegie wanted to do, right? Remember what his life goal was? I told you about that. Andrew Carnegie's life goal was to make all of his money in the beginning of his life and spend the other end of his life giving it away. That's a pretty cool goal, isn't it? That means he made enough money in half of his lifetime so he could spend the other half giving it away. What an incredible virtue, what an incredible outlook on life, outlook on time. How's that for spending your time? How's that for managing your time? See, everything comes down to time management, doesn't it? There's only a certain amount of hours in the day where you're awake. There's only a certain amount of hours a day that you get to sleep. You got to be able to manage your time. You got to focus in on it. Don't get caught. Here's another thing too I heard, which makes a lot of sense with time management, is don't spend major amounts of your time on minor things. You got to try to buy some time. That's how you buy time. If you get really good at major amounts of your time, and you get things done in a shorter period of time. We call that collapsing time frames, don't we? You collapse the time frame. Instead of get done in an hour, you get it done in 15 minutes. Now you got asset management, back to you, 45 minutes to do something else, to start another project, to get something else going. Time management is vital. Time management means that you've decided to take control. The other expression we've heard before, does the day run you, or do you run the day? Hey, that makes sense. They say stuff about bad habits. Bad habits, basically, either they run you or you run them. And usually what it looks like, a good analogy of it is, a bad habit is like you getting a real vicious dog. And instead of you controlling the dog controls you. And next thing you know, you're stuck in a corner or cowering in a corner because the dog's got you cornered. Is that what happens with a bad habit? Is that what happens with your time all day? What happens at the end of the time, at the end of the day? See, at the end of the day, you got to say, wow, that was awesome. That was something else. And really, and you think about it too, what you ought to do, and what you ought to try to do, is basically set up a time to organize your time. Here's something that always grabs me. It's a real simple self-talk. It goes, my mind is orderly and well organized. I consciously choose what I think, and I always choose those thoughts which are the most positive and beneficial for me. See, those phrases right there talk about time. They talk about how you're going to spend your time thinking. See, a lot of your time needs to be spent thinking, planning. What do they say? Plans don't work, but planning does. I've heard that before. Plans don't work, but planning does. So the action of planning, the action of making a good, solid plan works. Okay, that part of it works, but the plans don't always work. You got to be willing to modify it. You got to be able to figure out, well, that took a long time. That took a lot more time than I really wanted it to take. We got to change it. We got to change our, what's the word again? Time management. We got to manage our time better. We're going to keep on coming up to that. We're going to do a little longer spin tonight, by the way, too. I don't know if I mentioned that in the outset. We're going to go a little longer. We're going to get off this time management subject and get into something else. But for the most part, time management is what we're going to talk about for the first half. Now, what we want to do also with time management, we want to make a determination of 4 simple things, right? We want to figure out how to spend our day, how to spend our month, how to spend our year, and how to spend our life. 4 simple circles. Now, think about this. Imagine if your money or your time was equated to money, okay? Let's say you want to accumulate $20 a day in savings, okay, for retirement. Well, then at the end of the month, how much money will you have? And then let's say at the end of the year, you'll have a certain amount of money. At the end of your life, or right towards the end of your life, you'll have a certain amount of money from there. Do you see how all that works? That's all time management in a sense where you're managing something. Only thing is pockets of time need to be covered. Let me ask you, I asked this question once to a young lady I was working with. I said, let me ask you a question. And I'm just curious. I'm not trying to, make any other kind of conversation with her, but I'm just curious. How long does it take for you to get ready to go out before you go to work or go anywhere you want to go? She goes, well, it depends exactly what I'm going to be doing and where I'm going to be going. See what I mean? See, people can figure out ways to manage their time to get ready to go out, their physical appearance. But how do you get ready mentally to go out and do something? How's your time management there? You see, you got to understand that or we oughta. I heard this too. This is a lot easier way for your ears to listen to. We ought to think about this, not you ought to. Don't worry about it. If I say you ought to, excuse me. So what I'm trying to say is we ought to, okay? We're all in this together. We ought to find out ways how we can manage other things. This young lady wanted to figure out how to manage how she was going to get dressed in the morning, how long it was going to take. Well, what if she figured out a way how to run her day a little bit better than that? You get out of the house, you go to work, you do whatever you got to do. What about after work? What about the things you're working on outside of work? The old saying, first you earn a living, then you build your life, right? You gotta earn your living. You gotta be able to pay your bills, keep the lights on. But then what's your other interest? How are you investing your time after work? What do you do? Do you go work out, or you go find the biggest box of Cheetos you can get? What do you do? What do you do in that little spirit of time? That extra 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours, whatever it is, that's totally free. What do they call that? Discretionary time, right? That's a key. That is the key a lot of times on how people actually do with their lives. They have to know what to do with that free time that they have. That free time usually determines whether or not they're going to be successful or not, doesn't it? Think about it. You got a person, right? And they decide to take their free time to study something or to look into something or to open up a little business of something that they really love. All right, and they hope someday they can make their little, part-time. What do they call that? Turning part-time. What is it? Turning part-time dreams away from full-time nightmares. Ever hear that one? That's a good one. I've heard that before. In other words, what do you do? Well, I show people how to take their full-time nightmares and make them into part-time dreams. See, you make a part-time opportunity into something, and then all of a sudden now you're spending your day doing stuff you want. Now all of a sudden what happens? Time flies. It's easier to manage your time. What is it? Think about this as far as time management. What is it that you do that when you do it, you lose all track of time? You don't even realize where the time goes. That might be something you might want to spend a lot more time on. You might want to try to figure out a way to manage your time into doing that. Isn't that what time management does come down to? Doing the things you really like, doing the things that you really enjoy, doing the things that get yourself going, get yourself motivated so you can get the juice out of life. What was the expression I heard? It goes like this. It goes, life is not the passing of time, but the collection of the experiences. Maya Angelou said it's not how much what is it? How much life we live. It's how much life we put into what we're living. And it's all in that context where don't worry about what the quantity is. Worry about the quality. We used to always talk about that in the business I was in. You want to spend quantity time or quality time? That's powerful. That's back to almost like the major and minor. Do you want to spend quality time or quantity of time? What is it? What's the quality of time? What's the essence of life? What's the part that's going to get you going, get you in the morning? The old saying, are you going to roll out of bed or are you going to jump out of bed? How fast you want to get to what you want to do. One person said, oh my God, boy, that's spending a lot of time on something. Yeah, but if you love it, you don't even realize it. You don't even realize it. They say a lot of times we're put into situations where we don't even realize how hard we work on things because we have to, because of an adrenaline rush. Whatever it is, get that surge, get that fire, get that desire. That's going to get you over the hump and help you manage your time. There's another thing I want to tell you about too, is years ago, the cars were made a little different, okay? Might be aging myself a little bit. Years ago, if you locked your keys in the car, there was no manual that really said how to get your keys out of the car. But what we found out was if we took a hanger and we stuck it in between the windows of the front and the rear windows, we could take the hanger and we put a little curve on it. We can hook it onto the latch of the door and unlock it, and then we can get into the car, get our keys out. Nobody ever had to show us that in a manual. We figured it out on our own. You know what that lesson teaches you? It says even if you don't know how to do it, if you want to bad enough, you'll figure out a way. You see, that's what time management's all about. Even if you don't know what you're going to do, how you're going to get stuff done, you'll figure out a way. You see, what happens with a lot of people with time management is they don't know how to prioritize it. So therefore, a lot of things that are real important, or what they really thought were important, they don't do because they don't know how to get rid of this minutia, the stuff that's really not as important, or they just can't decide which is worth spending the time on and which is worth not spending the time on. That's usually where time gets wasted. That's called poor management of time, isn't it? That's called poor management of time when you take the time and you don't use it in areas that you should. That's called poor asset management, isn't it? Isn't a business? It was real simple. All we did was show people how to take money they're already spending, take the savings that they would get, because we showed them how to spend less money where they were already spending, take that money and invest it. That was really the bottom line. All we did was teach people how to find that within their current budget. Real simple stuff. But not everyone caught on, but that's a long story. But anyway, that's what you got to study how to do. You got to start saying to yourself, wait a minute, what do I really want? What are my outcomes? The outcomes determine a lot about how you're going to manage your time, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. Imagine if you had four things you could do today, four things, but your real desire is that one real outcome you want to do. What's going to happen to the other three things? They're going to go down lower in the priority list. And then you know what's going to happen? You're going to realize how bad you wanted those other three things. You're going to say, you'll take a look at it and say, I really didn't want to do that at all. I didn't know how I made the list. Do you see what I'm saying about time management? Time management allows you to understand more about how you want to spend your day, how you want to spend your week, how you want to spend your month, what you want to do with that year. There's so much to be gained by effective time management. When you think about all the things you love and think about all the things you really want to do and how you really want to spend your time, what brings out the most amount of juice in your life? What makes you feel good about yourself? That's where time management really kicks in. We got a couple of the pictures here. I just want to run through them real quick just to refresh your memory here. We talked about them. Of course, the time, the clock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I once read a book, real simple, and it was a recording also, but it was called How to Get Your Point Across in 30 Seconds or Less. All you need is an opening. All you need is an opening line, the body of the message, and then the question. That's really how you get your point across in 30 seconds or less. 30 seconds is pretty quick for somebody's life. Say to somebody, you got 30 seconds, boom. You hit them with a question. Here's another thing, too, how you can manage time better. Here's what you do. You sit down with let's say you want to talk to somebody about something, but you really can't talk to them about it unless you really know how they feel about it beforehand, right? So here's what you do. You say, hey, I want to talk to you about something. Jimmy. Say the person's name is Jimmy. Jimmy, I want to talk to you about something. Yeah, sure, what's up? You say, well, look, I know you got a lot of questions for me, in terms of what we're going to talk about, and I got a few for you. Is it all right if I ask you a few questions? Bam! Automatically, you've now taken control of the conversation. You will find out how that person is about a certain subject. Now you know how to approach them. You say to them something simple. Let's say it's a simple subject of, I don't know, going to the zoo, all right? A scale of 1 to 10. The 0 would be the least amount of interest you'd have in going to the zoo, and 10 would be something you'd think would be great going to the zoo. How would you rate that? What number would you give that? The person gives you a number, you say super, and then you start telling them about going to the zoo. Do you know what I mean? It's simple stuff like that. But the most important part of it, for time management purposes, is to find out how they are about it. Here's another thing that you do, too, just to even cut down on the amount of time being spent on it. Here's how you say to the person, Jimmy, look at, I want to tell you something. I got a few questions for you. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions? First question I want to ask you is, if we're going through this conversation and I feel that, it's really not for you and I'll feel it's a good fit, we're not even going to get into it any further. Fair enough? And is it okay if I stop right there? Or will you stop me if you feel it's something that you're not interested in? Yeah, sure, okay, sure, I'll stop. Okay, good. Then you say, well, conversely, Jimmy, if I feel it's not a good fit for you and we're not going to really get anywhere with it, I'm going to stop. Is that okay with you? Yeah, sure. Okay, what's up? And then you start with that conversation about going to the zoo. Then now what you've done is you've allowed both parties to realize whether or not they're wasting their what? Time. You don't want to waste people's time. You can't, you even end it with this. You say, Jimmy, look at it. Hey, I don't want to waste your time, if it's something you don't even want to talk about. And I certainly don't want to waste mine. Here's another thing about time management. We can get into it because we're a little longer today. Are you, and think about your occupation, are you paid what you're worth? I don't know. That's a good one, right? There you go. Right there. Paying, right? Money. Now we're back down to money. What are you worth? If you go up to an employer, and you say, well, I want to make a certain amount, I want to get a job, all right? Let's say you want to get a job, say you want to open a business, whatever it is. But anyway, let's just say it's a job. Do you know what you're worth? If you don't know what you're worth, and you don't really have an idea what you're worth, aren't you just going to kind of take what they give you? You might as well say you're begging for a job, right? No, you got to go in there and you got to see if you're paid what you're worth. How are you going to determine that? Because you know the time that you put into getting in front of that person to get the opportunity to have that job. Think about that. Your time is precious. Your time is precious. You know what you're really doing when you think about it? You are sacrificing your life to spend it for somebody else. And they're paying you in replacement. That's what a job is, right? That's what any sort of business enterprise is, right? It's a piece of your life. Let's face it. Our life's made up of seconds, minutes, hours, days, blah, blah, blah. We only get so many. I don't know, man. Unless they change the score, unless they change the whole way they do it now. And, that's really all we get. We get seconds, we get minutes, we get hours, we get days, months, years, and that's it. Decades, whatever, okay? It scores, you want to say that, but the bottom line is, that's all you get. But if I'm willing to give up a certain amount of my life to work with somebody so they can pay me, so I can sustain my life, what am I worth? What are you worth? Are you getting paid what you're worth? And really what you're saying to yourself, in essence, is, what's my life worth? What is my life worth? That's huge. That's like one of the biggest time management questions you can ever ask. Well, time management, blah, blah, blah. It's a good subject, Mr. Spin, but how does that really apply to me? What are you talking about? That really means, are you worth the time? Is your life worth X number of dollars an hour? It's funny. Before they cut out the lights, we can even keep track of how much our life was worth an hour. You think about all the money you made, right? Whatever you want to call it from a monetary standpoint. And now you can determine what your life was worth per hour. Well, think about it. If you get in front of somebody and they pay only blah, blah, blah an hour, boy, that wasn't really worth that much. Shouldn't you be out there going for more? I mean, I'm doing the motivational speaking here, right? My job is to get you to be more, right? My job is to get you to go out there and do a lot more. Well, what do you want? What do you want? What's the scoreboard going to read when they click your lights out? What is it going to be that you are worth? Doesn't matter to you. How much time have you spent thinking about that? The lesson gets learned over and over, and it's all through the time. It's all through the time spent. Is it worth going to school? I don't know. What do you want to study? I don't know. Well, is it worth going to I don't know school? You know what I mean? You got to be specific. Here's a question. Zig Ziglar, long ago past motivational speaker, he always said, are you a dynamic specific or are you a wandering generality? A dynamic specific, in other words, you specifically know where you're going, or are you just a wandering generality, buffeting around all over the place, you don't know where you're going? What are you? I guarantee you probably would want to be a dynamic specific, because a dynamic specific goes on the vacation that they want. A dynamic specific winds up living where they want. A dynamic specific winds up finding out where they want to spend their time, right? A dynamic specific spends its time doing something they really want to do. Isn't that what it comes down to? And they come down, I mean, think about it. You're sitting in school. I mean, how many of us have been in this position? You're sitting in school and you're looking at your clock or your whatever nowadays it is, anything. The clock on the wall, that was always great. You're sitting there and the clock's right in front of you. You could see the minutes go by. You're bored pickles. You can't take it anymore if the person says one more word or you have to sit there any longer. That is your time. That is your life going by. Do you want to spend your time looking at the clock? Well, and there's got to be something better than that. You're definitely a wandering generality if you're doing that. Anyone can just sit there and look at a clock all day. Find something that motivates you. Find something that gets you fired up. You know, it's not that hard to find something that gets you fired up. I do this as a hobby. Okay, it's motivational speaking, but I aspire to get in front of larger and larger groups as we go along. So I can basically move out of what I'm doing right now and do it full time. That's my goal. That's my ambition. Am I going at it as hard as I should? Am I spending as much time on it as I should? Probably not. But I'm here talking to you about it, and I'm here talking to you because I believe that this is the way it gets done. It gets done by setting aside the time. You know, most they say this about salespeople, but it's about life too. Most people do not plan on failing. But you know what they do? They fail to plan. You see that's big, right? That comes right back at you. And you're not planning on failing, but you just decided not to plan. You know, it's like getting ready for a football game, or you're going to play on a football team or a basketball, any sport. If you don't prepare for your opportunity to compete, how are you going to win? You got to take the time to prepare to be the best you possibly can to beat that opponent, right? To beat whatever it is you're trying to do. Maybe you're trying to run, the 4-minute mile, and you've been training and training and training, and all of a sudden it finally has an opportunity to get it. You're going to go get it, right? But if you're not training, you're not going to get that 4-minute mile. Still going to be trucking along at 6 minutes for a mile. It's the same thing with anything. Maybe you're in archery class. I don't know, trying to hit 10 bullseyes in a row and you can only hit one. Whatever it is that you set your sights on, you got to prepare. And time management is a big part of that, a huge part of that. It can't even be expressed any more than that. Time management, we talked about the Henry Ford concept of the assembly line. That was designed to cut down on time. We talked about Andrew Carnegie and how he basically, decided what his goal was to spend half of his life making money and the other half giving it away. All this stuff, Benjamin Franklin had the most wisest things to say to a lot of Americans back then. A penny saved is a penny earned. Put your money to work for you. You know what he used to do? He used to take the money. Here's what he would do. He'd observe the human nature of the people that he was working with. He knows a lot of them, for some reason, thought that drinking beer was very good for them. So they all spent money at the taverns drinking beer at the end of the day. So a lot of them ran out of money because they didn't have enough money to go buy the beer after they were done working for the day. So what he would do is he'd let them borrow his money that he had already saved up. He let them borrow the money that he already saved, and they paid him back in what? In interest. They paid him back in time, right? In the time that money was working for them. See, that money went to work for them right away, even though they really didn't earn it. So Benjamin Franklin said, well, I'm going to give you this money a lot quicker than you've earned it. So therefore, you're going to pay a price for that, and it's coming back to me. And they said, sure. And all of a sudden, he had 7, 8, 10 people that were paying him interest on the money that he saved. See how smart that is? That's incredibly wise. That's incredibly smart. What's to say you can't do that? What's to say you can't save money to help people run a business? What's to say that you can't come up with ways in which they're keeping themselves as busy as they want to be, as productive as they want to be? And just by you helping them do that, things can move along in that direction. Do you see what I'm talking about? That's all time management. And think about what Benjamin Franklin did. By taking that money that he saved and giving it to other people and having them pay him back with interest, all of a sudden he was making 3, 4, 5 times more per hour than he originally was making. Why? What he did was he decided to manage his time to get himself ahead. He figured it out. He sat down and he thought, oh, wait a minute, these guys are going to keep drinking beer every night and they're going to come up short with their money at the end of the week. Why can't I take advantage of that and help me hit what? My goals. See, goals have a lot to do with time management too. That's when I was talking about, remember, collecting time frames? You know, Benjamin Franklin, we'll talk about it again, chopping down a tree, right? We talked about it. Give him 4 hours. He'd spend 3 hours sharpening the saw, sharpening the blade. So every time he took a whack at it, it started getting the tree to fall. He didn't want to waste any of his time. He didn't want to waste any of his energy. 1 hour. So he spent 3 hours sharpening the blade and only 1 hour chopping the tree. Why? Because he was more prepared. The blade was prepared to do its job. What about you? Are you out there sharpening your saw? Are you figuring out better ways to get your time managed? Get your life in order. That's what it comes down to, doesn't it? It comes down to how much you want to do it. You see, there's another thing too about the goals and time management. Let's look at it this way. Let's say you decide you want to buy a house, all right? What sacrifices are you willing to make to buy that house? Look at it this way. Here's the way you got to look at it. You make enough money to buy a house if you took all your money and put it into buying the house. Problem. You have to pay bills to stay in your current dwelling. Now you got to look at it very carefully. What do I have to do? What price do I have to pay to get that house? What price am I willing to pay is more important than what you have to pay, right? It doesn't matter if you have to. If you're not willing to do it, you're not going to do it. So what time? How am I going to manage my time so I can get into that house as quick as possible? What are you going to have to sacrifice? What price are you willing to pay? You see, here's another thing about paying the price. You always pay it in advance. You always pay it in advance. You want to get good at something, right? Let's say you want to be a violinist. Let's say you want to be a guitarist. Let me say you want to be a great singer. Let's say you want to be a great motivational speaker. You got to pay it in advance. I got to stand up here and talk to tons and tons of people until I finally get good enough so I can get where I want to go monetarily, right? So you can get where you want to go. Maybe you want to become a mathematician. Maybe you want to become a math teacher. Okay, I'm not saying that that's something that you definitely want to do. Any kind of teacher, okay? You got to go to school. You got to go through the rigors. You got to learn how to teach, right? Be a great fisherman. You want to learn how to be a great fisherman? You got to learn. You got to spend the time. That's what I'm saying about paying the price. Want to drive a car? You got to learn how to drive a car, right? It's the same thing. You got to manage your time. You got to be willing to put the time in so you can get something back. Here's another thing about time management. We can go round and round with this, but it's worth it. Do you believe that a temporary inconvenience is worth a permanent result? Good question, right? Temporary inconvenience is worth a permanent result. In other words, a little kid, right? He's wearing braces, right, for 12 years, or whatever, 4 years of his life, 3 years of life. All of a sudden, all of his life, all people say is, wow, what nice teeth you have. Boy, your teeth are really straight, really look nice. 3 or 4 years of his life, though, he had to pay the price. He had to go through the inconvenience of people thinking he looked stupid with the braces. But then all of a sudden, he's 15 or whatever, 16, 17 years old. That person looks like a sharp person. Nice straight teeth. Good looking person, right? Is a temporary inconvenience worth a permanent result? You ought to ask yourself that. And if you think about it, that's time management right there, isn't it? You're managing your time. You're spending your time. You're putting in your time. And you're looking for something more down the line. You know, the old saying, what is it? They say one of the tricks to losing weight, is that what it is? Yeah, losing weight is to eat less in your lifetime. So that way you don't have to worry about dying too early, right? That's one of the ways you do it. One of the ways you make sure is that you don't eat bad foods that shorten your life. You're going to wind up eating more. That's what it is. One way to lose weight is to eat more. That's what it is. In other words, the results will be while you're living, your weight will be low, but in the long run, you'll probably eat more than anyone else because the other ones who ate bad died. You get what I'm saying? Because they ate bad. Or they couldn't even eat that food anymore, and they hardly could eat anymore because they're so sick. That is called time management, isn't it? Because now, if you think about it, all of a sudden, you're not spending your time putting yourself in the grave. You're spending your time keeping yourself above the ground because you're eating correct. You know, and exercise, same thing. The guy who exercises more usually has a more healthier life than the person who doesn't. It's that simple. Take a quick water break here. Just about ready to wrap it up here. Got a few more minutes. But the bottom line is, your life is made up of many choices. You know, you can have the right attitude and come at it this way and say, you know, right now, today, I choose to let nothing stop me or stand in my way. No problem or defeat is ever the end of the road for me. I know roads don't stop, people do. So I make sure my roads keep going. So do I. I keep moving, and that keeps me winning. Say this to yourself also. You say, I will win. Someone might say to you, why? And you say to them, I'll tell you why. Because I have faith, courage, and enthusiasm. Those are three things you can work on, right? You can always work on that. Faith, courage, and enthusiasm. Everyone has it, just a matter of how much you have, right? And if your God-given talents, your God-given abilities have that, it's all right there for you. You just have to pluck them like something off a tree. Here's another thing. Let's look at that first thing I said. And this might help us summarize a little bit about time management. You say, my mind is orderly, okay? All right? And if you look at it, my mind is orderly. What does that mean? That means methodically arranged, okay? And it's well organized. That means you go into a store, okay? That is an orderly store, right? Usually a successful store, you go into any store. Isn't that orderly? Aren't the products on the shelf? Aren't they in a certain section, right? And didn't somebody organize that? Well organized. Well, what about your mind? What is your mind like? Is your mind orderly? Is it well organized? Okay? Do you consciously choose what you think? Do you consciously choose what you think? Hey, that's a big one. All right? They say our attitude, all that stuff that goes on, all it comes from is what we're thinking about and how we feel about it. Well, if it starts with what we're thinking about, what are you choosing to think about? Are you choosing to think about how you're going to manage your time? Are you choosing to think about how you're going to make your first $1,000,000, $2,000,000, $3,000,000? What are you thinking about? A lot of people, I'll promise you this, and we talked about it, we did the survey, 75% of what they think about is negative. 75% of what they think about doesn't even get them anywhere near where they want to go. It gets them way off track. You see, your mind is, you consciously choose what you think. Well, the other side is, but you always choose those thoughts which are the most positive and beneficial for you. Do you do that? Do you always choose those? Probably not. Most people don't. That's not a problem. You can work on it though. You know the old saying, you chase perfection, what happens? You gain greatness or you gain success or you gain whatever along the way while you're chasing perfection. Well, if you chase the perfection of always choosing exactly what you need to be choosing that's positive and beneficial for you, you'll be on your way. See, that's time management. What do you spend your time thinking about? What are you thinking about? What do you think? You ever hear somebody say that to you? What are you thinking? Why did you do that? I guess you weren't thinking. You weren't spending your time right. You weren't managing your time. Why do you spend your time doing that? A lot of people do. See, you know what happens? They start developing a habit. You know how simple it is to get, you know how simple it is to identify a habit? And this is something you could take home and think about. All you need for a habit is three simple things. You need a cue, a routine, and a reward. That's a habit right there. All the, a cue. What's a cue? Well, something that gets you to start into your routine. Something that gets you going. Something that gets you moving towards something that you do every day or something that you've been doing over and over. There's a cue or something that sparks it. Maybe you hear a sound. Maybe you see something in your mind. You think about something. You choose to think about something. Okay, you choose to think about this. And then the next thing you know, boom, you go into a routine. You know, you hear a song, you like the song, you start to dance. Every time you hear that song, you start to dance. What's the reward? You feel good after you dance. Same thing. You reach for a Twinkie, right? You see the box of Twinkies, you grab the Twinkie, the routine, you start eating it. What's the reward? It tastes good to you. Simple as that. You know, same thing. Everything's got a habit. See, that's the other thing too we can cover too, as if we haven't talked enough. As time management is having habits. The more habits you have, the easier it is to manage your time. You realize that. And good habits make you more productive. You see, here's how it goes again. If we spend our time developing good habits, we can do the things that we need to do quicker. See, the whole idea of a habit is it gets things done quicker. We don't have to figure out what to do. We just do it automatically. You see, that's the problem. See, here's the kicker, though, with a habit. Say, well, I got to get rid of that habit. No, you never get rid of the habit. You got to get rid of, number one, the routine. The routine is the pain, okay? The reward is whatever you decide the reward is. You can modify the reward. The cue might be always there. You might not be able to get rid of that. Or you got to understand what that reward is. It's satisfying a deep goal. And the reward doesn't always have to be this being satisfied for that feeling or that emotion, whatever it is that you want. The reward is just the reward. You can label it whatever you want. See, a lot of people, they smoke or they eat fried foods and all that stuff. They like it for the crunch and they like it for the juice or whatever the flavor is that they get. Well, what if you substituted the flavor for some healthy food? All of a sudden you're into the routine of eating, but then all of a sudden the reward is not that flavor that you got. All of a sudden you switch it over to something else. You see, it's all possible for you to control your habits. It's all possible for you to control your thoughts. It's also all possible for you to manage your time. Your time is precious. We're only here for a flicker, right? We talked about that. We're only here for a flicker. We got to do something with our time. Think about it. I don't know how old you are. I don't know how young you are, whatever it is. But I guarantee you go back 10 years, you can remember that time passage like nothing. Last 10 years of your life, you can remember it like it was yesterday. Last 20, if you're older, last 20 years, you can probably remember it like, don't let it slip away. Hang on to it. Be tough. Be vigilant. Keep charging. Make it your best day ever. Super to talk to you. Spinato Spin. Always great talking to you. You can always catch us on YouTube. We got a little library going there, Spinato Spin Library. Got well over 120 editions for you. Got one good long one here and one other one back there. Great to talk to you. Take care. Have a good night, everybody. Take care now. Bye-bye.